In the Caribbean Sea, off the coasts of Cuba and Haiti, lies the island of Jamaica. Famous for its beaches, rainforests, and rich culture, Jamaica is the home of reggae music and a popular tourist destination. But Jamaica's road to independence has been long and rocky, from Spanish domination through British rule to an independent country. Join us as we explore Jamaica's journey from indigenous inhabitants to the colorful tapestry of cultural influences that now define the rock. Before the European invasion, Jamaica had two distinct historical cultures that had settled on the island. The first was a civilization known as the Redware people, after the red pottery they left behind, who probably arrived on the island around 600 CE. The second was the Taino, an Arawak people who colonized the Caribbean in roughly 800 CE. The Taino called the island Jamaica, meaning the land of wood and water or the land of springs. The first European we know to have reached Jamaica was Christopher Columbus in 1494 CE, who transliterated the Taino name to Jamaica. Then in 1503, he spent just over a year there when he beached his ships. In 1509, Spanish explorer Columbus's crewmate and first Jamaican governor, Juan de Esquivel, created the first permanent European settlement in Jamaica. The port colony of Sevilla la Nueva, or New Seville, was established near the Taino village of Maima in the hope of becoming a gold mining center. When no gold was found, the island became an agricultural base for the Spanish. They began growing crops and farming animals, introducing oranges, lemons, limes, figs, and sugarcane, which thrived in the Caribbean climate, as well as pigs, horses, and chickens. The Spanish enslaved most of the native Taino, and many of them died from overwork and European diseases. However, some survived in remote locations or married Spanish men, keeping their culture going to the extent that Taino ancestry still exists in Jamaica. The first Africans to come to Jamaica were brought on slave ships directly from their homeland in around 1518. By the early 17th century, the population of Jamaica was around 3,000, which included around 500 enslaved Africans. In 1655, Admiral William Penn, father of the founder of Pennsylvania, was put in command of an expedition that invaded and captured Jamaica. Within 5 years, the Spanish had been expelled. Still, a lot of the enslaved Africans were able to escape and form communities in the highlands. They established farming communities in remote and defensible areas, growing plantains and yams, hunting, and developing herbal medicines. There is also evidence that they merged and intermarried with the Taino, who had remained on the island. These escapees were called Maroons, which was probably an anglicized version of the Spanish word cimarron, meaning wild. In 1664, Jamaica created its own assembly, which meant that the small elite group of wealthy white plantation owners and merchants could initiate bills, which would be accepted or rejected by the governor who represented the crown. Although the bill still had to be approved by the British Privy Council, the assembly steadily grew in power until they essentially governed Jamaica. From the mid-17th century to about the mid-18th century, the Caribbean was the center of the golden age of piracy, and due to the British fearing the Spanish would try and reclaim Jamaica, Jamaica's ports became safe havens for buccaneers at the behest of the British military governor. In particular, Port Royal developed a reputation for lawlessness. The pirates brought money, stimulated the economy, and attracted merchants and artisans, earning Port Royal the title richest and wickedest city in the world. Life in Jamaica was tough, and the European settlers were susceptible to tropical diseases like malaria and yellow fever. The enslaved Africans died in droves from both European and tropical diseases, as well as the extremely harsh working conditions. On the island, the deaths of enslaved Africans significantly outnumbered the births. Despite this, the population continued to grow as European immigration increased, and enslaved Africans continued to be shipped to Jamaica in order to support the agricultural and economic needs of the Europeans. By the early 18th century, the population had grown to around 18,000, and over half of the population were enslaved people. In 1670, the Spanish signed the Treaty of Madrid, which officially ceded the control of Jamaica to the English. In 1672, Jamaica became the world's busiest slave market, with Britain holding a monopoly on the slave trade. Before the end of the 17th century, the black population outnumbered the white population by at least 5 to 1. Jamaica also became highly valuable due to its agricultural production. as it produced sugar, indigo dye, cocoa beans, and coffee. All this production required labor, and the population of enslaved people swelled to 300,000 by the late 18th century. By this time, there was increasing civil unrest, threats of invasion from Spain and France, and unreliable food supplies, which caused 15,000 enslaved people to starve to death in the 1780s. Throughout the 1700s, the British faced internal and external threats to their rule. Wars with the Maroon population, French and Spanish attacks, and slave revolts kept the British military fighting to keep control. The white landowners blamed missionaries on the island for inciting the rebellions and burned several Baptist and Methodist chapels as retribution. In 1807, Jamaica's society underwent a significant transformation when the British Parliament abolished the transatlantic slave trade and approved an Emancipatory Act that stipulated by 1838 any enslaved people in the British colonies would be granted their freedom. Many former slaves left the plantations to start farm smallholdings in the nearby hills. Now, they had lost their free labor, and as the price of Jamaican sugar had plummeted, the plantations became less economically viable. But instead of offering the now free black Jamaicans a decent wage, several governors of Jamaica, Charles Metcalfe and James Bruce, brought in workers from India and created the island's first railway. These Indian indentured laborers first introduced cannabis to the island. Unsurprisingly, the governor's measures did not stop the plantation system from collapsing, which led to mass unemployment and poverty. They did, however, plant the seeds for the nation's future cultural ties to ganja, the name of which is derived from the Sanskrit word for marijuana. In 1865, black Jamaicans living in Morant Bay protested the unfair living conditions and laws. Baptist deacon Paul Bogle had been preaching a radical political vision and had been present at the protest. A warrant was issued for his arrest, but a riot occurred when armed forces came to arrest him, which resulted in the death of 18 militia. Reports that white people had been killed in a black protest riot caused outrage amongst the Jamaican Assembly, and martial law was declared by Governor Edward John Eyre. The suppression of the rioters resulted in the deaths of over 400 black Jamaicans, including Paul Bogle, with a further 600 being brutally flogged and thousands of houses burned to the ground. Although the white landowners in the Caribbean applauded Eyre's actions, an official investigation by the British government resulted in his dismissal, and he was recalled to England to stand trial for murder. However, a grand jury in London ultimately acquitted his case. As the Jamaican Assembly had yielded power to Eyre, it had orchestrated its own demise, and in 1866, Jamaica was declared a crown colony. Despite some improvements to the economy, including reducing the dependency on sugar and starting a lucrative banana trade, by the early 20th century, unemployment was still a significant issue, and thousands of Jamaicans left the island to work on Cuban sugar plantations or help build the Panama Canal. There was also a growing black cultural revival, and in 1914, Jamaican Marcus Garvey founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Garvey would go on to become an important figure in the Harlem Renaissance. During the 1920s, a growing professional class of people of African and mixed ancestry began demanding a more representative government and expressing dissatisfaction with the Crown Colony system. This unrest was exacerbated by the Great Depression of the 1930s, which led Jamaicans to establish labor unions and start demanding self-governance. The 1930s also saw the emergence of the Rastafari religion in Jamaica after Haile Selassie was crowned Emperor of Ethiopia. Haile Selassie's pre-coronation name was Rastafari, which the movement adopted as the title for their new Christian-based religion, believing Haile Selassie to be Christ reborn. Jamaican Rasta are the descendants of the enslaved Africans who converted to Christianity, and they maintain that the King James Version of the Bible was deliberately altered to allow enslavers better control over the enslaved people. The Rastafarian message of self-pride, hope, and redemption resonated with Jamaica's poor and marginalized communities and helped instill a sense of national pride and self-belief. In 1938, growing unrest in Jamaica caused the British to appoint a royal commission to investigate the social, political, and working conditions on the island. This commission resulted in a new constitution in 1944 that allowed all Jamaicans the right to vote, regardless of race and class, and the establishment of a House of Representatives, a nominated legislative council, and an executive council. In 1953, the Constitution was altered to allow for elected government ministers, and in 1957, the Executive Council became a cabinet. By 1959, Jamaica had the right to internal self-government. During this time, Jamaica also benefited from the 1940 Colonial Development and Welfare Act, which made provisions for the commercial development of Britain's economically dependent territories. Colonial development grants allowed Jamaica to prepare for independence and finance the Jamaican branch of the University of the West Indies and many industrial projects. In 1958, Jamaica became a founding member of the West Indies Federation, which hoped to establish political unity between territories in the Caribbean. However, the federation was dissolved in 1962 after issues including the British-imposed administrative structures, disagreements over policies, and an unwillingness to give power to the federal government. The collapse was mainly due to the withdrawal of Jamaica, which held a national referendum in 1961 that showed the majority of Jamaicans favored leaving the federation. After the dissolution of the federation and anticipating independence, Jamaica started establishing a national flag. The committee assigned the task agreed that the flag's colors should be black to denote the difficulties the Jamaicans had faced, yellow to represent Jamaica's natural beauty and sunshine, and green to symbolize hope and agriculture. They summed up this choice with the phrase, "Hardships are there, but the land is green and the sun shineth." The initial design was unequal horizontal stripes in a green, yellow, and green pattern. However, the flag design was found to be similar to that of the national flag of present-day Tanzania, and the design was changed to a yellow cross, or saltire, with the green and black in the background. In April 1962, the Jamaican Labour Party won the Jamaican election. In August of that year, Jamaica became the first Caribbean island under British rule to gain its independence. Jamaica remained part of the Commonwealth, a voluntary association of independent countries that were once British colonies. The death of Queen Elizabeth II and the coronation of Charles III caused Jamaica to rethink its position in 2023, and Jamaicans scheduled a referendum in 2024 to decide whether to cut ties completely with the British monarchy and leave the Commonwealth. At the time of writing, the referendum has yet to be held, and Jamaica's future relationship with its former colonizers is still undecided. While many look to Britain to make a formal apology for their role in the transatlantic slave trade and subsequent mistreatment of black Jamaicans, Britain's Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak refuses to engage in discussions, stating it's not something that we will focus our energies on. Only time will tell whether Jamaica will move completely away from its old colonizers, but as around 800,000 Britons are of Jamaican origin, the two countries will forever have familial ties, and as with most families, this relationship comes with both affability and animosity. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the colonization of America, check out our book, History of the Caribbean, a captivating guide to Caribbean history, starting from Christopher Columbus through the wars of religion, slavery, and colonial laws to the present. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.